This is Cult Film Face-Off.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Cult Film Face-Off. My name is Chet Roivas. With me this week is not Nick Leonard. Instead, I have Jon Denton.
Hello.
John and I used to do a podcast many years ago called Chet and John's Reassuringly Finite Gaming Playlist. It doesn't exist anymore, but it is still on YouTube if you were interested in hearing that. But that was a video game show, so we thought, as John was coming on the show, why not do video game-related movies? So we've picked a pair of balls. We initially were going to do, what was it, Doom and something else?
Better films. I can't remember what the second one was, but yeah.
I think it might have been Mortal Kombat and Doom, I think.
Yeah. Why did we decide not to do that?
Well, I have an irrational love of one of these films, which we'll get into very shortly. But we're talking about House of the Dead from 2003 and Far Cry from 2008, both directed by Uwe Boll, both based on video game properties. But we will start with House of the Dead from 2003. A group of airheaded supposed college students travel to a logistically impossible rave on an island known as Isla del Muerte. What does that mean? Who knows? House of the Dead.
It was a nightmare. It all started a few days ago.
Where do you hide? When they're everywhere. What do you do when there's no way out? How do you kill what's already dead? Any way you can.
Like I said, it all started a few days ago.
Doesn't this bother any of you? We're on the island where the party of the year is supposed to be happening, but it's completely deserted.
Well, they sure as hell did not go to 7-Eleven to get more booze.
Can't hear anything.
Neither do I.
Now, the only way to make it back alive is to send them all back to the House of the Dead.
I've been waiting for you for a long time.
Okay, so House of the Dead. This is definitely not my first time watching this. Had you seen this before?
Well, yeah, I watched it with you many years ago. I think this might be the third or fourth time I've seen it.
How did it hold up?
To be honest, I was very excited to be able to watch it again because I had such a good time watching it the first couple of times. I think they were both with you.
Right, okay.
It's definitely a film you need to watch with other people, I'll say that.
True.
I think the novelty wore off quite quickly when I realised I was just on my own watching it on my laptop. But, I mean, it's a fascinating movie indeed. Quite what it has to do with the video game property House of the Dead, apart from the fact there's zombies in it, I'm not entirely sure. But I think you can probably say that about every single one of Uwe Boll's films.
No doubt.
But yeah, I mean, an awful movie, but an awful movie in the most magical way, I think.
Yeah. Did you like it as much as you liked it earlier, or did it lose some of its appeal?
It definitely lost some of its appeal, and I think it is purely because you need to be laughing with somebody else. And also, I'd seen a lot of the terrible gags. There's a part later on where zombies are jumping through a forest, and you can clearly see the springboard, and that cheered me up. But I looked around, and there was nobody to enjoy the laughter with. But I mean, to be fair, though, I was never bored, and I enjoyed the ride of the movie. A few things it left me with. One, I've got a lot of time for the fact that he decided to cut in clips from the game for absolutely no reason. I mean,
brilliant.
There can't have been a moment. I'm sorry, there has to have been a moment where he's looking in the editing studio going, is this a good idea? Should I leave these in? It's so easy to cut out. And he still left them in. And that must have gone through a lot of people, so I respect him for that. I love the fact that when one guy dies, it does a weird death animation that may be from the game, but I'm pretty sure isn't from the game, where the camera does a 360 and he dies. That's a beautiful moment. But I think my favourite thing about House of the Dead, and you could probably say this about a lot of his films, it does relate to Far Cry as well, but more so this film, is that basically the main character completely changes halfway through, and I can't remember any other film where halfway through the film it's just about a completely different person. And I was like, you know when you walk into a room and you forget why you're there? and then you either remember or you just get on with something else. And as we get older, it's more likely the second part. I feel like House of the Dead, and perhaps all his films, are kind of like that, because you realise sort of maybe 30 minutes into the film, you're like, hold on, what the hell's going on now? What happened to all that stuff that was happening before? And it feels like he's just gone in and he's got right, no, we need to do this now, and we're shooting this bit, and this is the bit that's happening, and there'll be people around him going, but what about all that stuff from before? And he's like, what stuff? So in that respect, I can only admire him as a filmmaker, and all the shoddy stuff, like the terrible cuts. The terrible takes. There's one bit where a zombie's climbing onto a boat, and it's just a normal thing where he's just grabbing a chain to climb onto a boat or a rope or something like that. But there's this like real staggered bit with his hand as the actor clearly can't quite find the bit of the rope. Any other movie, they just do another take. Like stuff that happens, I'm sure, every single movie, and you just do another take. That's what it's for. Uwe Boll's clearly, you could feel the lack of energy in his body. You can feel how tired he must be when he's making these movies, because there's no other take. Oh, this will do. And that's the whole movie. This will do. And by the end of it, no sense whatsoever. Three movies in one. God knows. I mean, it turns into like the main bad guy who appears for the last 10 minutes, and there's a brief flashback of him at the beginning of the movie, which makes me feel like they got so far into making this last scene with this last bad guy, and then they watch the film back and they go, hold on, we've not mentioned this guy before 1 hour 20 minutes into this movie. Let's quickly film a flashback with him and cut it in at the beginning. Same with the main character. He appears at the beginning and then doesn't appear again until 50 minutes in. Yeah. It's a bit of a masterpiece, really. Yeah,
you're not wrong. I love the flashback to that. The guy's supposed to be on a Spanish Armada ship. If you look at the footage of the ship just before and after certainly after that flashback, it's a boat that's blatantly moored somewhere, and they've just filmed out to sea to make it look like it's actually sailing on the water. I mean, one of many amazing shots in this film. You said that you think Uwe Boll was just knackered and he couldn't be bothered. I mean, he strikes me as someone who's so enamoured with the process that he just thinks everything's brilliant. Do you think that it's more possible that he just can't be bothered?
It's not that. Maybe that. Surely you can see when when an actor's hand is clearly like grasping for the bit that he needs to grab, that maybe you should use a different take. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, who could possibly know? Because you can't fault the man's energy in terms of his output. Maybe not so much these days, but for a period there didn't seem to be 3 or 4 months going by without another one of his films coming out. So, I think lack of energy is probably not fair. But maybe just he's in a rush because he's bought the license for 19 video game properties in 1 year and he has to get them all out. He's going to be bankrupt, something like that.
Of all the licenses that have ever been bought, House of the Dead is, what a license it's the easiest money a publisher's ever made, because what is it? It's a bunch of things dying in a doorway. That's the game. The game, the film, gets off to. The problem with talking about this film, I love it to bits. I've seen it innumerable times, and bad films are so subjective. They're more subjective than good ones. The majority of people, I'd say, would watch this and absolutely hate it, and it wasn't the same as watching it with an audience, but I watched it. This is probably my 7th or 8th time, and I still thought it was amazing. But it is that weird. The thing that I love most about it, and this is true of all of the films of his that I've seen. When are people in danger? In any moment in the film, whether it's a big action scene or a horror scene or whatever's going on, some of the people in the shot appear to be very, very in danger and scared, and other people seem to be just walking around like everything's fine and there's no danger going on. And you're like, what's happening here? Are some people scared? And so it's not. It's just he clearly is just an absolutely appalling director, but appalling in a way that I can't help but love. What will happen is that you'll end up to say, I made some notes here, and all they are is a list of things that I love about the film, and they're all just appalling shots. The worst reveal in cinema history, I think, is in this film. Did you spot it? It's hard to miss.
What is it?
It's Clint Howard's appearance as a fisherman with a hook. There's a scene going on in the foreground, and he appears in the background, and it's like you can tell the actors thought that this was going to be cut away to a surprise, but he just kind of shuffles on, and that's the big reveal. Here's something I noticed. Uwe Boll. Oh, that's the thing. His name's Uwe Boll, but I'm going to call him Uwe Boll because that's what I've always called him. And Uwe is a bit more amiable
definitely.
than Uwe. So I call him Uwe Boll. But I always look at his films, and I think I've seen 4 or 5 of them, and I always can't quite understand or quite put my finger on why they just appear so cheap. Far Cry had a $30 million budget. This had like a $10 million. Yeah, really. This had like a 12, I think. They're not cheap movies that he makes, but they always look so cheap. And watching this, I think for the first time it hit me. I reckon 85%, maybe 90% of it's handheld. He just uses way too much handheld. He never puts a camera on a tripod. It just kind of ends up looking like camcorder footage most of the time, and I think that must have something to do with why they just look so fucking cheap whilst not being cheap at all. I mean, the rave footage, that must have been a GIF by now, shouldn't it?
Surely. I mean,
Yeah, there must be. Yeah. Like you said, everything's just it's so bad it's kind of like a dream.
Yes.
There are so many choices that were made either under the assumption that nobody would notice or nobody would have the brain power to think about why something was illogical or didn't make any sense. And the things that it does, there's a scene early on where a rave that's apparently been going on for about 2 hours, a couple move to the beach and a girl goes in the water. And the guy, despite the party being 2 hours old and everyone's just drinking beer, he just passes out on the beach in the middle of the day. But Uwe Boll starts shooting it like it's Jaws, and there's all these under the water POV shots, dramatic music, and she's freaking out and stuff. Now, why have you just turned a scene in which literally nothing happens into Jaws?
Because that was his idea for that day, and it doesn't matter what happened before. That scene's beautiful as well. Absolutely beautiful scene. The way that the guy it's too cold for him to go into the water, so he just passes out on that terrible stony beach. Yeah. Why would you ever go to that island? The beach is terrible.
And how? I mean, because no one would take you there. How did they get all the rave equipment there? How did any of it get organised? I mean, the whole concept
How did
of it
they
is
get
just
the
funny.
giant SEGA banner there?
Yeah, I mean, there are too many questions with this. I mean, literally, I've got. I mean, Uwe Boll's way with an action scene hasn't really changed. What he does is put really cheap dance music on and just cut things a little bit faster. There's also, this is worth pointing out, the game and film are called House of the Dead. There is a house in this film, but it's basically a shack. It should have been called Shack of the Dead. The beautiful thing is that when they walk into this shack, it turns into a mansion so huge that, I mean, it's probably 15 times the size of what it appears to be on the outside. And if there's one, the best thing about this film, I think, obviously, is the huge set piece, the big gun battle, which goes on for about 10 minutes, which is a pure joy from start to finish. I mean, that must have lived up to what you remember, right?
Yeah, that was an absolute delight, to be honest. I absolutely enjoyed. I was rewinding certain parts and trying to film little bits of it just to relive the magic over and over again.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, it's 10 minutes of people firing guns. As actors who are playing zombies skulk around confused as to whether they're supposed to be threatening or not. Some of them are just in the background going ugh. And the actors who are shooting zombies appear to want to kill some zombies more than others, etc., etc. Periodically we're treated to Uwe Boll's version of bullet time, which I read it's a device called a turntable camera, where they basically put a camera on essentially a turntable and spin it at high speed around the actors. But it's so dangerous that I don't think it's been used since. Although that's what I read online. It doesn't look terrible, that effect. I mean, the way they just keep jumping to it, the characters change clothes, they're holding different weapons. I mean, the continuity is absolutely shocking. But so many individual shots in that sequence are just gems. You'll see a confused-looking zombie pop his head up for someone to shoot it off. Some zombies look like Swamp Things. Some of them have no makeup on whatsoever. And when you're watching this, and I was watching it this time, and there's a bit that I always forget about. When I think it can't get any more entertaining, someone has a flashback to what's just happened. You essentially watch an abbreviated version of the bloodbath that you've just watched, and it was clearly tuned to fit the crescendo of the song. So this piece of dance music goes, and then I'm sure Uwe Boll heard that music and just decided that there had to be a flashback to what you've literally just seen there. So I mean that scene is amazing. One of the greatest scenes of all time, I dare say.
No doubt. I love the line towards the end of the movie as well, when that bad guy who appears just for the last bit for a laugh, he captures the old Alex Garfield, the new main character, and straps into a table, and he's going to extract his flesh or something. And Alex Garfield says something like, "You're taking my flesh to make yourself immortal. Why?" And the bad guy goes, "Because I want to live forever." And it's like, well, yeah, I know that, but why?
Did you clock the music in the that was playing in the 10-minute bit that I just?
Was it a specific track?
It was a track made for the. I mean, every track in this, every bit of soundtrack music from this film is made by an Eastern European band or artist that doesn't seem to have done anything else. So I'm secretly believe that it might have been Uwe Boll himself making the music, but the music that plays during that big set piece is a kind of sort of heavy rock thing, which is the lyrics, you know, the House of the Dead comes up. Yeah. It's a terrible piece of music, but it's amazing because it's got no drums on it. It's supposed to be like a pulse-pounding, exciting, you know, to fit the scene, and there's no drums. I listened to a record. I'll stick it at the end of this podcast. I'll download it and stick it on. There's no drums, and it's fascinating to listen to because all the energy is zapped out of it. It sounds like someone's tapping on a couple of the music or the drums.
The lack of drums, yeah.
Why is this not pumping me up a little bit? It's because there's no percussion. Also, even by the standards of like the horror genre, let alone the video game horror genre, if that's even a genre, I don't think it is. But this is a pretty poor roster of actors and characters. I mean, there are some bland people on screen. And there's a character called Alicia who ends up being essentially the hero, played by an actress called Ona Grauer, and she has the least amount of characterisation by far, but she's the best thing in the film by a mile. I did not need to check IMDb to see that she's the one actor in this film that has gone on to have something resembling a career, because she sticks out like a sore thumb. Also, I really love the fact that there was a voiceover, because of all the films to need a voiceover to explain character motivations or to explain who characters are. Well, at the beginning, when it shows who these characters are and explain, you're just like, this is unbelievably unnecessary. There's my favourite moment in the first 5 minutes is when they loudly talk about how they've missed a boat, and then the voiceover comes and they missed a boat. I was like, I love that.
Who was the guy doing the voiceover in the beginning?
It's the guy who appears halfway through.
Yeah.
Who is he? He apparently was Una Grauer's, Alicia's ex-boyfriend or something. They had a past somehow, I guess.
Yeah, I thought they just got together in the movie. No, I don't know. Yeah, he became very important.
Okay, I've made a very, very brief checklist here of my 3 favourite things in House of the Dead. Okay. Some that I noticed this time, and some that I noticed the first time I ever saw it. I take it you haven't done anything vaguely similar?
No.
Okay. All right, well, the first thing, I remember when I saw this, the first time I saw House of the Dead, it still kills me. When I first saw swimming zombies, because there's a shot of a boat and then you just see these heads bobbing up and down, and it's zombies doing the breaststroke towards a boat. That absolutely killed me the first time I saw it, and I still think it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And then not long after that, after those zombies have gotten onto the boat, the main characters are on the waterfront shouting out, "Captain, Captain!" And then a zombie marches to the end of the boat and stands to attention with his head tilted. And it's one I could not possibly describe how perfect that moment is. A zombie, what do you want? Grumpy neighbour, but it's a zombie. And my favourite extra ever in film history, she's still there. I looked for her again, and there she was. At the end of the big set piece we discussed, there's a girl in a striped shirt who has no zombie makeup on. She's completely confused, completely lost, and she's not only unsure of her footing, she doesn't want to touch anything. So there's just this girl who's supposed to be a zombie. She reminds me of the Kate Capshaw's character in Indiana Jones and the Temple of, worried about breaking a nail or something. It looks like she's going to walk off set and say, call my agent, I'm out of here, I don't want to be on this disgusting island. Overall, what do you reckon of the film?
It's difficult to say because it's a complete disaster in many ways, but I'd be lying if I wasn't entirely entertained, and I've watched many, many worse movies, but movies that have bored me to tears, movies that are probably technically better in so many ways, but I haven't been entertained by them. And the first time I watched it with you, we were laughing at it hysterically, I think, the whole time. Yeah. And it was a great experience. I didn't have that this time. It was more chuckles to myself. But, I got through it, and as bad as it is, some of it isn't that bad. Does that make sense?
No, completely. What do you mean by not that bad?
Well, that action scene, it's a bit of a mess, and there's hilarious stuff with extras and the zombies, like you say, and people not paying attention. But at the same time, it's certainly not involving. You're not engaged or invested in any of the characters. But in terms of just things that are happening in front of my eyes, I've seen many, many worse movies. So it's tough to say. It's not. I wouldn't class it as like a 1-star movie.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't class it as that. I mean, I don't know. This is the problem, isn't it? I mean, I can imagine most people would hate this film, and they'd have every reason to hate it. Especially if you're looking for logic. I mean, some of the zombies, some of them can spit acid. Apparently, I mean, it's just a cavalcade of things. Like, hang on a minute, when did that become a thing? Since when are zombies got acid for blood? All of these things. I mean, it's constant surprises. Even as someone who's seen it as many times as I have, it still surprises me by how badly conceived and inane so much of it is. It's bad in... I don't know why it hasn't got quite the reputation that I think it deserves, which is as a truly, truly Troll 2 level... So bad that it is genuinely extraordinary.
No doubt.
Okay, all right. Well, shall we move on to Far Cry?
Absolutely.
Okay, Far Cry then from 2008. A young journalist ropes an ex-Special Forces agent into investigating a mysterious military compound where a madman may or may not be creating genetically engineered super soldiers. Far Cry.
Doctor, I assume you've got something interesting to show me.
He can fight harder and longer than any human soldier.
You saying you can't control it? Sedated! You're making brainless monsters!
Outstanding.
Don't you think it's a little far-fetched?
It's too good of a story to pass up. I'm calling to confirm that you were able to get that boat captain.
Special Army my ass. He's a drunk.
I'm just the driver.
You're just a simple boatman.
I haven't said anything about being simple.
You're a sick, egotistical maniac.
Let's not go over the top.
Persistent son of a bitch.
Okay, I've seen this before. I have a feeling you're going to tell me that we watched it together. I think I remember that. Did we do that?
We did watch it together, although my memory of it was shaky at best.
Okay, all right, not just me then. Okay, so how did you... This was your second time. Well, how was it?
Real strange one again. Like, I don't think Far Cry... in individual moments is a terrible film. You can take 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, and they kind of slot into a B-movie style action movie pretty much anywhere, but taken as a whole, it has that dreamlike quality again, like House of the Dead. And I think technically it's a better movie than House of the Dead, but we'll go into other stuff about that later. Like House of the Dead, though, I felt like I'd woken up about 50 minutes in thinking, hold on, this is nothing like what was happening at the beginning. This is completely different. There's different people. There's central people that have suddenly appeared out of nowhere, just like House of the Dead. Yeah. And why is any of this happening? And what are the characters' motivations? Why have they changed so much? Utterly bizarre. So, yeah, taken as a whole, just a really confusing mess. I mean, the main character's personality changes multiple times throughout the movie. He starts off kind of stoic, and then he becomes a bit insecure, and then he's an action man, and then he's stoic again, and then by the end of the movie he's cracking jokes. I mean, he's completely just never the same person throughout. And yeah, again, a tough one. Just like the setup, I mean, obviously it has nothing to do with the games, but I think we've established by now that none of his movies ever do, apart from the fact that there's some shooting in it. I mean, in a boat. Really, it couldn't really be much different to the games. You'd make a movie about like a lone soldier moving around an environment, taking people out. That's what a Far Cry movie would be. Yeah. This, I guess, feels like an action movie that he made and then bought the license afterwards, but that's fine, whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's a scene where you first meet the super soldier, and it's very like Ed 209 or one of many scenes that have been like that in many movies. But at the same time, like the super soldier, the main sort of big white weird steroided up bad guy soldier thing, is quite an intimidating visual. It's quite, he's kind of got a face like a giant plate, and he's obviously a huge man. And he does quite a good performance. I mean, it's like a terrible but good performance. It's kind of hard to describe. It's like it's very hammy and cheesy, but at the same time, it's like I would actually be pretty intimidated by that, whatever that is. Less so when he breaks out of his restraints and sort of throws the guy against the wall, and it goes into super slow motion. That removes some of the drama at the moment. But yeah, when he's just sitting there, you just think, fuck, I don't want anything to do with that guy. It's like that. It's kind of like a real life Terminator. It's very, very strange. And so there are moments, there's sort of flashpoints in Far Cry, which I enjoyed. Again, I wasn't bored. I would say I was far more bored than House of the Dead. But again, I mean, like I said, I've watched plenty of movies and plenty of bad movies that are worse and pacing's worse, and they linger on far too long on extremely boring things. And I don't think Far Cry falls into that trap too often. But the fat guy... Because, I mean, I remember when you first said we were going to do this movie, and I was thinking, all I can remember about this movie is there being an incredibly irritating fat guy in it. Yeah. And it's like 45 minutes in, 3/4 of an hour into this film. And I'm thinking, that must be another movie. There's clearly no fat guy. It's the main character, the female journalist, the bad guy, the bad scientist. And then 50 minutes in, up crops the comic relief, and he's a central character for the rest of the movie. This terrifically annoying fat man who looks like his face is just melted into his shoulders. And I mean, I can't even describe his performance. It's excruciating. You probably won't have seen Mr. Tumble on CBeebies, but I'm sure some of the people listening who have kids will have. He's basically this guy called Justin Fletcher, an incredibly irritating fat guy, very similar to this guy, but the English version. He has like 3 or 4 different shows on CBeebies, and he's just, I mean, he makes parents skin. You just want to peel your own skin off, like the guy in House of the Dead. Actually, it's an excruciating human being, and this guy is just the American equivalent of that. And why is he even in the film? The food guy. I'm the food guy. Just
what is that about?
Yeah, a horror. And I was like, oh no, this is that film. This is the film I'd seen, because I also remembered the big white enemy. I think that's his official character name. So. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to judge it against House of the Dead. I guess we do that right towards the end of the podcast. But as a film on its own, there are elements that are okay. The action is very similar to House of the Dead, and it's, you know, like you say, fast cut, a lot of handheld footage. But the whole film, nothing felt too budget, nothing felt too... Right, I don't know. There's an accomplishment to this film, yet it's still a mess. It's really hard to get my head around.
Yeah, it's the first shot in the film really stopped me in my tracks, because it's an overhead and it cranes down to eye level and swings around a little bit to capture dialogue, and all the actors hit their marks. So I was like, holy shit, this is a really nice opening to a film. I think the film in general is just better made than House of the Dead. It's a huge step up. It's more functional and resembles a quote-unquote proper film, much more than House of the Dead does. But that kind of means that I think it's way less worthy of your time. The first thing I noticed, aside from that first shot, is the editing. Editing is really good. It was edited by somebody called Karen Porter, who I think she one of her credits is the... I can't believe I've forgotten her name. Actress, massive actress. She's everywhere. She's with that Chris Pratt. What the hell's that?
Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence. House at the End of the Street. She edited that anyway. That was one credit that I noticed on her CV. But she brings a kind of formalism and a professionalism to the production that was absolutely not evident. This is her only Uwe Boll film, and I looked through the credits as well. There's an art director there who's worked on some of the Twilight movies, I think, and no other Uwe Boll films. It seems like he sort of cherry-picked some people that only ever worked with him on this. Just the way the film looks, the villain's base looks kind of what you want an evil sort of villain scientist base to look like. You know, it's plausible. It doesn't look too cheap. Everything it looks like it did kind of cost in the regions of what it did cost. I mean, I don't know how they spent $30 million on it, but it's clearly a step up from House of the Dead. But it has no pace. It's just an unbelievably lethargic film. I mean, they have to drag out action scenes because they have to sort of fulfill the running time. And just by the end, the last half an hour in particular, I was like, why is everybody there? They went looking for a character. He's gone, and they're not trying to leave. I mean, even if the character who's also been turned into a super soldier, even if they were sort of trying to find him or make sure that... Because he just drops dead at the end, and then it was never an issue. What's going on? It's the same thing as House of the Dead. You just think that Uwe Boll doesn't really care about anything. I wonder what he's thinking about when he's directing these things.
I think he's just forgotten. Even though films don't work like that, and you have scripts and storyboards and planning and all that sort of stuff, I just prefer to think of it like that. He just forgot the other stuff. It's like he just did the whole thing in one shot.
That's a completely plausible, because it does. You do just sit there thinking, why? How did this come to be?
Do you reckon he's some sort of actual avant-garde like master auteur that's trying to create dreamscapes.
Well, there's lines of dialogue in it where I was just like, that could be in a Naked Gun film or a really, really heavy duty spoof. But it was played straight. Is it just really bad dialogue? I mean, that's one thing I will give him credit for. I'm always asking questions. I don't know where I mean, you never know where you are. You never know whether you are in the hands of somebody who knows exactly what he's doing or somebody who has absolutely no idea what they're doing. I think that's part of the appeal, certainly House of the Dead. I think in general the acting's better. There is some
definitely better.
There's some. I mean, Til Schweiger's a great leading man. I mean, he has nothing to work with, and his character is. I mean, what is his character? Nobody could tell you the answer to that. The lead actress is kind of funny. I thought she was kind of sort of passable, and then there's a scene where she has to act like she's shivering, freezing cold. So what she does is gurns a little bit and just keeps blinking. And I was like, that's a really interesting.
Like when you're cold.
that was a really, really. She's a confusing presence. She's quite passable, and then she pulls a stunt like that. I thought that was pretty entertaining. Who do you think was the first choice to play your friend the Fat Man?
John Candy.
No, I mean live.
Okay. Jack Black.
You reckon?
Oh, is it? Do you know the answer to this?
No. I just as soon as I saw him, I was like, that. I guarantee that part was written for Tom Arnold.
Oh yeah, well that makes sense.
They weren't even shooting for this. They weren't even shooting for Jack Black. They were just like, we'll take Tom Arnold.
We're not getting Jack Black.
Yeah, but the whole comic relief, the fact that Tom Arnold, I'll call him Tom Arnold, the fact that Tom Arnold's thrown in there, it's a film that wants to please everybody, but rather than carefully insert things, there's a love story which is just the most ham-fisted thing of all time, where they just get naked and then suddenly bang. Rather than insert these things into a narrative and make it interesting, it just flings them at you. Here you go. Here's the fat funny guy you wanted. Here's the love scene. We'll give it to all. It's really, and then it just gets out of the way, and then there's just really inane and quite badly shot action. That's not. I mean, I think the action, weirdly enough, is actually more enjoyable to watch in House of the Dead. This is just a lot of people running and sort of shooting guns at nothing.
Yeah, it's like action. I think has struggled generally in. Basically, since video games became decent to look at, and as they are now, very cinematic and beautiful at times, I think a lot of action movies have struggled to keep up. Like a lot of car chase scenes just can't really compete with a Burnout or a Need for Speed, so you really need to take it to the next level, and plenty of great films have done that. But yeah, the days of being able to just run around shooting at nothing and people falling over and a few squibs going off and a few explosions, it doesn't really cut the mustard when you've got Titanfall or Call of Duty that you can look at and be a part of. It's completely incomparable. Or Far Cry, of course.
Yeah, very true. But to give the film its due, do you recall the boat chase at all?
I literally watched this film. I literally watched the film before we recorded, and I've already forgotten about it.
Okay. There is. I mean, it's not a memorable boat chase, but it's all done practically. They actually sort of did it. There are quote unquote stunts, but it's nice to see action like that rendered in camera. And it's really well edited. It's not exciting exactly, but it's not boring.
Yeah,
so I have to say, it's actually. I'm kind of grasping at straws, but here's the most important thing I took away from Far Cry. Dr. Krieger, the villain, Udo Kier, he's kind of he has this weird avuncular quality. He's kind of a benign presence. He doesn't seem threatening at all. He doesn't seem like a traditional mad scientist. He's no real threat to anyone. And he likes to kind of exert his power for no real reason, and occasionally for quite petty and misguided reasons. And he doesn't entirely seem to understand what's going on around him. He is Uwe Boll.
Yeah.
Uwe Boll put himself in the middle. He's kind of presiding over this mess and doesn't seem too concerned with what's going on. And he's a bit of a diva sometimes. And it's that thing again. When are people in danger? Is there a threat? What's going on in the action? There's a bit where Udo Kier's walking around like he's perusing an art gallery, and this is happening 2 seconds after a load of his men have just been killed around him. What's going on? It's classic Uwe Boll.
Unquestionably. The man creates dreams.
Yes, he does. And some of them are absolutely brilliant, and some of them are less so. I think Far Cry is less... It's less throat-grabbingly brilliant than House of the Dead, and I think it kind of suffers for that. It also feels like television, not the way it looks. It does. It really hurts my head trying to talk about Uwe Boll's films in anything approaching any kind of depth, because you're just kind of they're just marvels of shit.
Yeah, they're just first drafts, and he doesn't re-edit. He gets everything done, and then it's done, and it's like, I'm not watching that again. That's done. Next one.
Have you seen Rampage, the film of his that some people actually reckon is legitimately quite good?
No, but I bet it's not.
That's what I heard. There's this kind of it's meant to be hyper violent and not shy about making the violence unpleasant. I don't think that's Uwe Boll making a statement about anything, which some people have suggested, but I do kind of want to see it. Are you going to go out and see many more Uwe Boll films after this?
I don't think I will see another Uwe Boll film
ever.
I don't really see. I mean, he seems to have. Is he stopped now?
He said he stopped, but I think he's probably got. I mean, he had a bit of a hissy fit because I think Rampage 3 didn't get funded or something, and he had that massive Twitter meltdown where he went on, or YouTube, I should say, where he made that video saying everyone can fuck off.
I really like that part of his character. That he fought his critics in a boxing match, and I'd like to have a fight with him. That would be a good video. He
would never get into a ring with. If you weren't prepared to box, he wouldn't get in a ring with you.
No, I'd box.
Would you?
Yeah, let's set it up.
Okay, I'll get in touch with him. Maybe I'll send him this to say, look how much I think we're too kind to him.
Well, I think we're the people who've been nicest about his films ever.
I mean, Far Cry is not quite as brilliantly mad as House of the Dead. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to pick which one of these two films is better, because I think that's probably Far Cry, and I don't like that just because I want to. I mean, I'm going to pick which I think is that if you're going to pick one of these films to watch, not only is House of the Dead more indicative of what the man's talents are and what his oeuvre, I think it's more entertaining, and I can't have sat through a film as many times as I have without being able to recommend it. So my vote goes to House of the Dead.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Far Cry is a better movie in in the weird world of objectivity, where things are better than other things by some sort of someone's definition. Yeah. But by being a better movie and still being a piss poor movie, it loses the charm. And House of the Dead is instantly far more entertaining. You say that, I'd imagine lots of people would hate the movie, but I can't imagine anybody with a sense of humour couldn't get something out of it, as long as they weren't watching it on their own and were forced to watch it for a podcast. But no, I'm joking. House of the Dead. Yeah.
I think it's just some people get so het up about things like bad dialogue and bad logic. I have friends that would just scream at this film, and I'd say just enjoy it, and they wouldn't be able to. So, this is still very much a niche film. But yeah, sorry. So you're picking House of the Dead as well?
Yeah, it has to be House of the Dead. I mean, I could watch House of the Dead again. It's going to need to be a little while, but I don't ever want to watch Far Cry again.
Okay, well, that's it then. House of the Dead is a better film than Far Cry. I'll stand by that till the day that I die. Thank you very much for listening. John, do you have anything to plug? You've got stuff to plug, right?
Oh, yeah, well, if you want to check out my YouTube channel, Jon Denton, that's Jon. Hit me up on Twitter as well, at Jon Denton. Instagram, Jon Denton 22. Just type that name in, you'll find stuff. Probably a college footballer who played in the NFL, but then you'll find me after.
Is there his name's Jon Denton, spelled the same way?
Yeah, spelled the same way. My boy.
Okay, yeah, well, keep an eye out for that guy. All right, well, thank you very much for listening. As usual, we're on Facebook, Twitter, etc., YouTube. Leave us a review on iTunes if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe on YouTube, all of that stuff. Thank you very much for listening. See you again.
Bye.